Today we're working on a 2006 Ford Expedition. We'll be replacing the rear lower control arm. First thing you want to do is jack it up, put it on jack stands, get the tire off. Just as a tip, I suggest trying to get this bolt loose first. This is the strut bolt here. The reason is that that's the most heavily torqued bolt. So if it's the first time coming off, that may be your hardest bolt to come off. So go ahead and try that one first before you proceed with the other bolts. Because if you can't get that off, then there's no sense in proceeding. And that bolt is a 30mm socket. On this end of that bolt, it has its own little lock thing, so you don't have to worry about putting a wrench on this side to hold it. You only have to worry about this side to buzz it off. Once that's loose and pulled out, we can go ahead and proceed with the rest of the job. So with the strut, we can go ahead and just leave it in. You don't have to pull it out or anything. Just leave it in. We just wanted to make sure we could get that out before we proceed. So now we can go ahead with the toe link here, or the lateral link. The bolt is underneath, and that bolt is a 18mm. When you try to take it out, if you find that it's spinning in its socket, it has a little hex head here that you can put a wrench on, or you could take a pry bar, put it here, and then push pressure down on it. For using power tools, this usually is just enough to produce friction so it doesn't spin. Once that bolt's off, we could pull it out. You may have to tap with a hammer just on that knuckle here, just to vibrate it out. Sometimes you can see it has a tapered end on it. Sometimes it just gets, just stuck in over time. So beating on it, creating that vibration, will bust it loose, and then it could just be set out of the way. Next, we can remove this bolt. It's an 18mm. This is for the sway bar. 18mm for that. We'll zip that out. So you can see how the center is just spinning. So what you could do is just take another wrench, hold that top, and then you can spin this out. So that's what these are designed for. Now that bolt is off, you just go ahead and let it hang. It'll fall through the hole later. Now we want to come over here and we'll work on getting this, sorry the lighting, but get this bolt off here, and that is 30mm. So we got that through bolt out, and you can see at the end that they leave you this little space here, so it allows that you can tap on the top of it with a hammer. You shouldn't need to really beat hard, but if you do need to tap a little on it, you're not going to mess up any threads. And then it also helps with the threading on the bolt. It kind of lines it up. But anyway, so that's off. Now we can go ahead and work on this bolt here. Is a 21mm. I lied. This bolt is a 24mm. This one, and then the other side here, right there, that's also 24. All right, we got that one out. So now we just have one more bolt, and that's on this side. And on this one, you don't have to hold it because that back there has its own little lock. This one over here, you have to hold one side while you unbolt the other, but this side you don't. And that's a 24mm as well. To get this bolt out all the way through, because there's not much space to get a finger in there, you can use a 3/8 extension just to put in that hole, and then you could tap on the end to punch that bolt through. You can see on the back side where that bolt goes in, it has a slot. The control arm hole is at the top of the slot, and that helps it clear the frame here. After that last bolt is out, it's just a little prying, little tapping on things, and it'll come out, and then towards the back is how mine came out. So down, out, and that's it. Installation is reverse, so we'll go ahead and do that together. Before installing the new control arm, we'll go ahead and just line them up together, make sure everything looks the same, the shape is the same, size, and all that kind of stuff. Just a real quick inspection. Everything looks good, we can go ahead and put it on the car. So the hardest one to put in is this back one here, just because that bolt doesn't give you much room to mess around with. So I recommend putting that in first, and you can wiggle and do what you need to get that in. And once it's through, you can put the nut on just so you don't lose the nut, but we're not tightening this one or that other side quite yet. That gets done at the end. So you can see on the back side where that bolt goes in, it has a slot. The best way to get the bolt in is if the control arm hole is at the top of the slot, and that helps it clear the frame here, putting it in. And then you just put it in as far as it'll go, and then you can drop it down in the slot to get it through the rest of the way. So with the little wiggling, we got this in. So we'll go ahead and leave it like that. We'll come over to this other side and we'll get this side in. And if you remember, this side, the bolt goes in this direction, and it'll be the same. We'll just leave it untight on this side as well. Once that bolt is through, if you want, you can go ahead and put in the sway bar link here in its hole. I'm doing the other side, so I'm just going to leave it hanging for now, but that's something that can be done right now. And then the next thing we could do, come over here and then put that bottom in the knuckle and get that bolt through. The sway bar link that goes through here, that's 59 foot-pounds. Just real quick before we put all the bolts back on, these are lock washers, lock nuts. Ford recommends replacing them, but they also say if you're not going to replace them, then we should use Loctite. So every single bolt, that bolt, this bottom bolt here, and the strut bolt will all get Loctite. So that's important. You can get these at the dealer, and they're only a couple bucks each, and that's really the best thing to do. But if you're going to reuse the old bolts, then we're going to use Loctite. Okay, so now that's on, our bottom knuckle is on. We can go ahead and put our strut on. That strut bottom, it can be a little challenge. What I find helpful is to get a screwdriver or something that you could put through the hole to get it lined up in place, and at the same time you might have to push down on this suspension to get it to line up in the hole. So a combination of pushing on it and then pushing on the strut itself to get it through, to get that bolt in. And then when you get the bolt in, remember that the nut has its own little lock, so you can't just put it all the way through that far, because then the nut won't be able to go on. So you have to only put it through a little, then the nut can go on. And then I like to finger tight, or you can put a ratchet on it to tighten it up, just to make sure that it's actually threading right and you're not cross threading anything. Thinking about it, the best way to put Loctite on this is to go ahead and push it all the way through, put your Loctite on it, and then tap it back, put the nut on, and then spin it on. Otherwise, the only other way to put Loctite on it is if you put it on before you even start putting it through, which you could do that too. But if you've already started and got it through and you're like, oh man, I forgot Loctite, well, go ahead and just tap it all the way through so you can expose the threads, put Loctite on it, and then tap it back some so you can put the bolt on. We can go ahead and torque this down. The torque on this nut is 295 foot-pounds. Go ahead and tighten this bolt up here, the control arm to the knuckle. That's 295 foot-pounds as well. We can go ahead and torque this one here, and then the one back there. What we'll want to do is load the suspension. The best way to do that and still have room is to put a jack underneath the lower control arm, kind of closest, as far out as you can. Jack it up there until it starts to raise off of the jack stand. And that'll be as if the car was sitting on the ground and all its weight was on that tire. Then we can go ahead and torque these. They're 189 foot-pounds each. So you can see how I have the jack stand under there, and it's just enough to get it off of the jack stand. And I'm going to leave that there in case something happens and it needs, and it drops, but just enough to get it off. It doesn't have to be crazy. So now we can go ahead and torque these down. I said 189, but it's actually 184. So 184 on there, and then 184 on that back one. All right, once you have those two torqued, double check your work. That should be it. You're complete. Take it for a good test drive. Make sure everything is riding fine. If you want, you can take it to the alignment shop just to be sure that everything is still right. There's a toe link that goes here, so if the new control arm isn't 100% machined precision exactly the way the other one was, out just a smidge, that could throw your toe out. So getting an alignment would be a good idea. But that's it. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.